Welcome to Uncut with Lucia. Today we are talking to Dr. Raman K Attri. He is a performance accelerator, an author, public speaker, and a performance scientist. So, Dr. Raman, welcome to Uncut with me, Lucia.
Thank you so much, Lucia. It's my pleasure to be at your show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm very, very honored to have you here, Raman. And I saw that you wrote 20 books, and they are in different genres. Is correct?
That's correct. That's correct, Lucia. It's
So,
range from all these genres, from poetry to leadership to business to even technical and scientific as well. So that's correct statement.
do you use this accelerate performance to be able to write these books?
That's a good question, Lucia. In fact, the acceleration and my obsession for speed is there since my childhood. So I think that I'm going to need to give some context that I lost my ability to walk when I was kid. I'm permanently disabled since childhood. I got polio when I was 6 months old. And when you get polio, the number one thing you lose is ability to walk. And with that, it goes your speed to walk, matching the pace with the others. So I think that's where my obsession for speed got rooted. So I told myself, if I can't walk, maybe I will walk faster with something else. And that something else was for me looking at how we can learn faster, how we can perform faster, how we can become star player in whatever we do at a little bit faster rate. And I think over the decades, I mastered that art. I did my research, and part of that one is to applying it on myself first. So I guess that's where my 20 books came in. It became very effortless for me at one point of time to be able to produce that much at a speed at an accelerated rate, I would say.
Well, that's impressive. And I was seeing that you dub yourself a performance accelerator. So,
That's
which,
correct.
yeah, which I think it's an amazing title.
I think there is a little bit of a story behind that. As a human race, I think every one of us strive for excellence. We want to achieve excellence. And in my definition, excellence is when you surpass what you had done yesterday, and then you build new standard, and then you cross those standards for yourself. It's not about race with somebody else, but it's a race with yourself to excel upon. But then what happens is that most people, they have the struggle. They know where they want to go. They know they want to achieve that excellence, but it takes many years. For some people, it takes decades. So I came up with this concept that how about if I help people to find out certain strategies that can speed up their path to excellence? And that's where I kind of came up with these two terms, combination of acceleration and excellence. So when you accelerate excellence, that's how I kind of came up with this term accelerator.
Mhm. That's interesting. And there is another aspect of your work is from disability to desirability. So can you share your story?
Disability to desirability. So it goes back to my journey, how I lived through that. As I was saying that, disabilities can be any type. It can be not just in physical, but it can be emotional. Many people have this mindset. They have these perceived limitations in their mind that will stop them to move forward. Those are disabilities too. And part of that one, what happens is whenever we face any limitation in our life, any disability, number one thing we feel is that we are not desired. People don't want us, or we feel that we are not good enough. So that happened with me as well back then when in childhood, I felt that I wasn't desired, I wasn't wanted, I wasn't accepted. So part of me wanted to change that equation. And when I went on with my spree of learning faster, and I ended up earning two doctorates, over 100 international and educational credentials. I wrote 20 books, and I did a lot of other things in my life. And part of that one is that when people get to know about those achievements, at some point in time, they possibly realized that they should have been disabled too, or maybe a little bit, because my achievement mostly came from disability. So that's how I kind of transformed that state of disability into a desirability, that if I wasn't disabled, I possibly wouldn't have achieved that much, what I have done today. So from that angle, I thought, the journey for most people is moving from disability of any kind to the state of desirability where people accept them, where people understand that they are more than what they seem to be on the surface. So that's how I kind of came up with that quote.
That was beautifully said. And with this attitude, Dr. Raman, you can inspire so many people.
Thank you
That's
so much.
it's beautiful. See, as a physical therapist, I have a passion for inclusion. And this idea is a step forward in that direction. So you also talk about finding the windows among the walls holding back. Can you elaborate on what that means?
I should rather say that wait for maybe 5 more days. I got a TEDx talk coming up this Sunday. And in that TEDx talk, I am exactly talking about the title of my talk itself is Windows Among Your Walls. And I'll give a sneak peek to your audience today before that talk goes live. So my perspective is this: when you have a limitation of any kind, it could be setback, failure, crisis, misfortunes, all of those act as walls because we feel limited. There is something we can't do. We feel some losses and we feel less than others. That's what every wall will do, to limit us. Then I say, most of the time, we are taught this: go ahead, break the wall. So full life, we keep struggling with our walls in an attempt to break down those walls. And it takes a lot of energy, a lot of efforts. And when we break those walls, we are not always sure that's what exactly we want, what's on the other side. Most walls do have windows too. So why not we look for windows? Probably there are opportunities available within those walls. And if we see it right, we'll be able to see the world beyond those walls. And that's where kind of came with this perspective that we should focus on windows because there are always opportunities. I'll give you one example. Back then, when I was disabled, I couldn't really have a much mobility and I didn't have any social circle either. I mean, there were no friends. I was contained in my room, but that was some sort of window for me because I didn't have social interruptions. I didn't have any social what they call spoiler friends. And I didn't have much mobility. So my best bet was to be, just glued to the chair and read books. And then I read every kind of books. The moment I started that spree, there was no end to it. And that's where the whole perspective about learning faster and learning ahead of others came about. And I found that as a window. I think, you know what? My disability is that window that gives me the leverage because kids in that age could never afford to have that much distraction free time, what I had. And that was my leverage. That was my window. And as I grew up, I figured out there are windows everywhere. We don't have to be limited by the walls. And we also don't have to struggle with the walls. If we look right, we can spot some opportunities there, some advantage. And if we leverage them correctly, we can achieve far better things compared to other people who might be still struggling with their walls.
Your disability is your superpower, Dr. Raman.
Yeah, I would say so. Thank you so much. I agree with you. But also with disability comes, there are certain things because when you're very clear that what you cannot do, it also gives you other kind of clarity, what you can actually do better than others, what your leverages are, which other people may not have. You have certain luxuries. And those clarities, I think in today's chaos world, the kind of world we are getting around us, which is very noisy, which is very volatile, I think that clarity also acts as a superpower.
Very interesting. And you just published a book called Speed Matters. It was in April 2020, if I'm not wrong. Is that
That
correct?
one I just recently published this year,
Yes. So
2021.
could you please tell our viewers a little bit about speed matters?
So this book is mainly for executives. It's for leaders and top management people out there in organizations, because the speed matters in business these days. And we have seen during pandemic that only those organizations were able to survive who ride upon some sort of speed. Either it was speed of introducing new solutions, or it was speed of launching new services for the customer during this lockdowns. But part of that one, what we realize also is it's not the organizations are doing anything, it's the employees. So if we are able to give employees the kind of skills they need at a faster rate, and if we can make them proficient in a shorter time, the organization will have competitive edge over their competition in the market. And that part is very important because once we come out of this COVID-19, the employees are going to need to work with different kind of skills they may have never worked before. They're going to need to use the technologies they have never seen. So there will be a race sort of thing for to recover the business. So I wrote this book based on my research, and part of that one was everybody in organization circle, they talk about speed, they talk about doing things faster, but that's not the real speed, because that speed create mad rush. The real speed is which gives you the competitive edge when your employees, your team members, your leaders, they are achieving a performance in a shorter time. That means they give you a fluid performance where they are consistent, where they're reliable, you can depend upon them. And that's the state what we're talking about, where the speed matters. And I wrote this book about how organizations are doing it out there. I approached 70 world-class organizations and figured out that they had certain metrics they were using that should be applicable across the board in several businesses. So that's the core of the book.
What is the feedback you receive from these companies?
I think major distinction which these companies are kind of using as part of their strategies compared to business as usual companies. That one is that in most organizations, how they view the speed is not correct. For instance, in most organizations, when they want to bring the speed, their one mantra is they push their employees hard, they set the aggressive timelines, and that create a sort of mad rush. In that mad rush, employees don't have time to learn the skills to the mastery. And it also, what it does is it create an impression of speed, but that speed is very short-lived because more often it gives you very shallow quality. And then once you deliver it to customers, you're gonna need to go back and rework. Now, once you need to rework those services or solution, the actual time to master becomes much, much longer compared to doing it first time right. So these companies' feedback is we need to look for how we can prepare our team members or employees to deliver first time right so that we don't have to rework. The moment they shorten that time first time right, their overall speed is much faster than other traditional companies. So that's the key differentiator, what these guys are using.
What advice you give to people who procrastinate? Because sometimes I have to admit that sometimes I do procrastinate. So how can a procrastinator accelerate their work in a way that they can improve their performance?
Good question. I think everyone at heart fundamentally is procrastinator. I think I wouldn't say that we do have those tendencies to some extent. Some have larger, some have smaller. And so we have to accept that factor that those tendencies are there. Now, how do we use those tendencies? Personally, I do have that tendency and I have a lot. But I have used it to my advantage. How I use it is there's one technique I use. I say, all right, part of this one is we want to start something, but we don't end. If the problem is that you're not even able to start, that one will take a little bit later. But the first part is majority of people like to do things, and they like to do a lot of things. They start with something, but they can't continue with their energy. Sooner or later, they will leave it and they won't take it to the end. That's another kind of procrastination these days, because people see their friend, people see their colleague, they get into this competition more, they want to do it and they start it, they can't finish it. So there I recommend this thing, that I start many things. I start each like a thread. So I give these guys an engineering example. I come from electronics engineering. So I say, a computer processor does many tasks at same time, but it doesn't do all the tasks at the same time. What it does is create threads. It start a thread, it pause the thread. It start another thread, it pause that thread. And then you got another task, you start it, you pause it. But as long as you remember where you paused it, and later on you come back and finish it, take it forward, you don't have to finish it. You take each thread forward every day or maybe every week a little bit. Maybe for a longer time, you're going to feel you're not producing anything. But there will come a time when one after the another, you will start completing everything. And that happens with me, that when I write many books, I start many books in parallel, but I do a little bit for each. I don't have this, I would say, urge to really complete or finish it immediately. But what happens is once I start bringing those books out, then one after the another, it will be a wave of books that will keep coming. But that's where I leverage my tendency not to be able to finish everything in one go. So I think we can leverage our fundamental tendencies the way it serves us.
Well, I feel much better now. And I know a very famous procrastinator that I'm sure you know as well, Leonardo da Vinci.
You see how many things he did, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but it took a while for him at least to finish the Mona Lisa. Wow, he was
yeah.
just
So
procrastinating.
exactly. But it's good thing sometimes, that's where your perfectionist tendencies might serve you better, because then it gives you time to reflect upon, am I doing it right? Maybe I should improve upon this. So once you take that approach of thread, you have time no spread out over several weeks. But by the time you're going to produce, it's going to be masterpiece. And after that masterpiece, your second thread will be about to be completed. And that may also become a masterpiece. So I use this methodology. I have used it for many years, and people keep asking me, how come I did 100 over international or educational degrees? I did 3 master's degree, 2 did doctorate. So fundamentally, I use this thread system.
I cannot even say how amazing your story is. And this is priceless. I'm so happy that people are able to see as our conversation, because many people struggle with start doing things. Seeing you even more, I believe that anyone is able to accomplish their dreams or what they have in mind. I think we need to focus. I believe that focus is the first thing we need to have, but I would like to know your opinion.
Lucia, for asking that question. I think sometimes the focus is a little bit overrated, because focus requires something before that as well. And that's what I call clarity. Because if you don't have clarity, it's very difficult to focus. Focus is only the later stage. So number one thing most of us struggle with is getting the clarity. There is so much now noise out there, and that it is very difficult to get that kind of clarity. People go to social media, they actually get more confused because they see their peers or colleagues doing different things, and they can't decide what they should be doing. In that race, what happens is they lose the belief what they had, what they originally wanted to do. And that creates much more non-clarity, I would say. It doesn't really give any clarity. And then we look for some coaches or some consultant or advisors, hoping that they will give us clarity. But I can tell you they are more or less, they're just selling the things rather than giving you the clarity what you really need. So biggest challenge right now in the today's world, what we have is clarity. people don't get an understanding how we should really get the clarity, because clarity comes in different forms. So my recommendation is, first we need to figure out why we want to do the things, whatever we want to do. And then comes is how I should do it. This why and how is very important piece, because more or less people are always clear about what they really want to do, but many times they are not able to relate the drives what they are being driven with. So why is very important, why I really want to do, and they need to spend a little bit more time on why. And also part of that one is how, that how I'm going to really take my why to the culmination point. And once they have understanding of this why and how, that's the journey what where their focus is going to help them. So that's my perspective to how people can really improve themselves, go forward. And part of this one is also, there is a thing, people also run after motivation and inspiration, which I believe is very short-lived. Because what happens, you go to a motivational talk or a lecture or a seminar, you feel charged, you feel inspired and motivated probably for a few minutes. By the time you walk down to your car parking, it's gone. It fumes away.
Yeah.
It just need one call from your client or your colleague or somebody or from your boss for that motivation to diffuse out. So that's not very sustainable. But once you have clarity, you don't need any other motivation or inspiration, because then you already know you got the fuel to go where you want to go.
Yeah, clarity is very important. Otherwise, you want to start doing everything at the same time. But as you said, we need to know what we really want to do.
Yep.
That was a very good tip. So, Dr. Raman, you are almost like a jack of all trades with all the different roles you have. So, what do you think is the most challenging aspect of this field you work in?
We human has multiple personalities. We play a lot of different roles. I mean, we are spouses, we are sons, daughters, we are friends, and we are fathers, and also, and a tiny part of us is we possibly are employees, professionals, or expert, or whatever our professional identities are. So from that angle, if you see, there is a larger portion of your life which may be connected with the human emotions and experiences, while a smaller portion is connected with your professional achievements. So part of this one is most people focus only on this professional arena, and they make a lot of wonderful achievement in that area. But what happens is a part of the personal dimensions they don't leverage. If we leverage all of those correctly, our logical side and our emotional side, I think we can be jack of many trades. Not really jack of many trades, but we will be able to leverage each dimension of our personality. For example, I wrote poetry books. That comes from a different dimension of my personality. But then I wrote technical books. That comes from my professional side. So when we leverage these, we do achieve all of those things. I think the challenging part of all this one is that how do you balance all that? Because in my field, because my field is related to learning, we're talking about on one side professional learning, and we're also talking about personal learning, which is going to drive our life. So challenge is how do we pay attention to both sides together? And that's where you might have seen on my website, I work with people to make them successful in the professional life. I give them technique and strategies to say that, okay, this is how you're going to progress faster in your professional world. But at the same time, here are your personal worlds. Here are different other dimensions of your personality. How are you going to accelerate your excellence? Because excellence is not going to be only going to come from your professional side. It can come from anything. Sometimes I find it very challenging for myself and telling people how to connect these things together. And to answer your question, that's the
Yes.
challenge in today's field. Today's field, this is the challenge in my field, that how do we tell people that you are a complete package? And you need to leverage your entire package in order to become excellent in whatever you do.
Excellent answer. And Dr. Raman, you are so successful. So what you still want to accomplish?
I'm still working on a platform. I want to kind of help people with how do they learn faster. If you see, Lucia, we go to school, we go to universities, we got teachers and professors who teach us mathematics, chemistry, geography, whatever subject you learned in your school. And when you went to university, people learn physics, science, and whatever profession they have, but nobody teach them how to learn, and nobody teaches us how to learn faster. And that's fundamental gap. If we people want us to learn so many things, number one, they should teach us right from the kid, when we were kid, how to learn. And I think that's the gap overall. And there are people who are learning scientists. There are people who are working in the learning domain. But are those available to schools, colleges, universities as their expertise down? Do colleges or university actually focus on teaching you the technique to learn and then the subject later? So that part I see as a gap. So I want to have a sort of platform which I can build for people where individuals, professionals, universities, school, colleges can leverage to draw upon the research and experimentation and bring that into their own settings that can help their people, whether it's team members or their students or their colleague, to learn faster in their life.
It makes a lot of sense, and this idea is brilliant. We don't learn how to learn. Dr. Raman, how can our viewers find you, find your books, your work, and your courses?
I think the best way to reach out to me is my website. It's called ramankatri.com. Pretty simple, just by my name. And most of the information is there, my books, my reports, blog, articles, and videos as well. But these days people use social media. So I am on major social media like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and it's with my name, Dr. Raman K Attri, and that's my handle everywhere, and pretty easy to find. So these are two ways to reach out to me.
I'm so happy to have talked with you today, Dr. Raman.
Thank you so much for your best wishes.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you very much.